The Story of the Ugly and the Bully. In a small, beautiful town, there lived neighbors named Elsa, an unattractive little girl, and Edward, a good-looking boy. They were also classmates at school. When they were young, they always played together, but when they turned 12, they started fighting because Edward became very mischievous and a bully. He always teased Elsa, calling her ugly. One day, Elsa and Edward met outside their houses. Edward called Elsa, and she was surprised because Edward seemed kind today. She approached him. Edward handed her a box. Elsa asked, "What's this? And why are you giving it to me?" Edward replied, "It's just a gift for you because your birthday is coming up, right?" Elsa was pleased and eagerly opened the box. Inside was a frog. Elsa screamed in shock and threw the box with the frog in it. Edward laughed heartily at his prank. Elsa walked away, furious with Edward. The next morning, while waiting for the school bus, Elsa saw Edward smirking at her as if teasing. She ignored him. In the classroom, she saw Edward still laughing at her. She sat in her chair and the class began. The teacher asked about last week's lesson. Elsa raised her hand to answer. When she stood up, it felt like her butt was stuck to the chair. She discreetly checked and found bubble gum on her seat, which Edward had placed. "This rascal. So that's why he was smiling at me earlier," Elsa thought angrily. After school, Elsa threw a crumpled paper at Edward. Edward turned around, looking for who threw it at him. He saw Elsa, who pretended she didn't do it and just kept walking. When Elsa got home, she looked at a family photo album on her study table. She had kept some pictures in the album, including ones of her and Edward when they were children and often played together. Elsa had a secret crush on Edward since then. She only got angry at Edward because he always teased her, but she tried to remember the old Edward who used to play with her to ease her annoyance. One day, Elsa's father received a call from his company. There was a project that needed to be completed abroad for 6 years, and Elsa's father was chosen for the job. That evening, Elsa's father talked to her. "Elsa, you'll continue your studies abroad. Our company has a project, and I've been entrusted to complete it. We'll be there for 6 years. We'll only return once it's done," her father said. Elsa was saddened by the news. She didn't want to leave, but had no choice but to follow her father. The next day, Edward saw Elsa and planned to tease her again, but he noticed she was sad. He hesitated and wondered why Elsa was sad. When Edward got home, he overheard his parents talking about Elsa's father. "Johnny, Elsa's father has a project abroad for 6 years. They're moving to another country," Edward's mother told his father. Edward heard this and thought, that's why Elsa was sad earlier. The following day, Edward saw Elsa sad again. This time, he didn't plan to tease her. Instead, he gave her a box. Elsa took it warily, fearing there was a frog inside. After Edward left, Elsa threw the box into their old mailbox, because she didn't want to be surprised by a frog again. That night, Elsa packed her things because their flight was the next day. She saw the photo album and decided to take it with her, but a photo fell and slid under her bed. It was a picture of her and Edward when they were young. Elsa didn't notice it. The night passed, and the next morning, Elsa and her family were ready to go to the airport. Edward watched from a distance, and Elsa noticed him, but didn't show any emotion. Elsa and her family left the country, and she continued her studies abroad. Meanwhile, Edward couldn't explain it, but he kept thinking about Elsa's departure. He often felt like something was missing whenever he went outside. At school, he frequently felt sad and seemed to be looking for something. Why was that? 6 years passed. Both Edward and Elsa graduated from high school at their respective schools. Elsa's father's project was completed, and they were finally able to return to their home country. Elsa had changed significantly in her clothing, her behavior, and her way of interacting with others. She was excited about the flight back home, thinking about enrolling in college soon. The enrollment period at her old school was also approaching. Edward, on the other hand, was not excited about enrolling in college. Despite having many admirers among the beautiful girls, he didn't pay attention to them. Edward preferred to be alone, always deep in thought. However, he couldn't do anything, because his parents wanted him to enroll in college for the upcoming term. On enrollment day, Edward went to the college to register. Many girls noticed him because he dressed well, was handsome, and had a strong presence. but he ignored